I can leave it in the past, but you're holding on to what you never had. It's good on paper.
Hi guys, welcome to Truth Talkin Thursday. This is Jim. I'm Jane. And I just said to Jim before we pressed record here that I feel like, I don't feel guilty, but I feel like we've been a little bit hard on parents in the way of a lot of criticism of taking responsibility and everything like that. And I believe that we've spoken the truth, and I believe that it makes sense, and I support what we've said, and I'm a parent too, and it's a struggle for me as well. My children are young adults, and you know how they talk about Mama Bear and cutting the apron strings and the birdies flying the nest and all that kind of stuff, right? In all seriousness, I think that as parents, and I'm not sure how men are in this, but I think that especially moms have a hard time not protecting or thinking they need to fix things for their children in one way or another. And there's a fine line between that angry mama bear protecting her cubs and letting them make their own choices and decisions and mistakes and learn from them so that they can have confidence that they can actually live their lives. And I think for me, it's a learning curve. It's I don't want to be that controlling mom. I don't want to be that mom that ends up hindering her kids or causing them not to have confidence or self-esteem. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So how was that for you? Because like you were a single dad for many years too, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I was. For both my son and my daughter.
Okay. So first of all, can I ask you, was there a difference between your son and your daughter?
Absolutely.
So did you feel more protective over your daughter than your son?
Absolutely.
Do you think that's normal?
Absolutely.
Do you think that's universal from father to mother? Or is it that just a strictly parent thing right across the board? Most parents feel more protective over their daughters than their sons.
No, I think I think that there's a special kind of relationship between fathers and daughters, and just as there is between mothers and sons.
Okay.
There seems to be that special kind of connection there. Not that you love one more than the other, and not that you would do more for one than you do the other. For me, that whole protectiveness is ever present.
Yeah.
Because I have lived longer than she has, and I have endured more, I have learned more, I have things to teach her. Those kinds of things are what parents are supposed to do for their kids. They're not supposed to do it for them, but they're supposed to help them understand the nuances of being able to do it for themselves. You want to protect your kids. There's no question about that, and that's not a bad thing. I think it becomes a quote-unquote a bad thing when it inhibits them from learning the lessons, the life lessons they need to survive on their own, because I am not going to be around forever. Mm-hmm. You'd mentioned self-esteem. I mean, self-esteem is not something you give people. It's something that they develop within their own self. Self-esteem is basically, if you take it apart, is self and esteem. Well, it's how much do I like me and who I am and what I do and how I do it. That's self-esteem.
But that's never going to grow in themselves if you always do everything for them.
That's right.
Because they're never going to learn that they really are capable of making decisions. Exactly. and accepting the consequences of those decisions, whether it's good or bad.
One of the hardest lessons I had to learn as a parent was our children do not learn by what they do right. They learn by what they don't do right. They learn by the mistakes they make. Yeah. My job as a parent, as a father in this case, is to make sure, or to, as best I can, that the mistakes that she or he is going to make aren't life-threatening. Mm-hmm. The hardest part is standing back and watching where they're going, and you know where they're going, and you can't head them off at the pass. You have to allow them to fall down, skin their knee, get them up, dust them off, give them a hug, give them a kiss, and say, hey, go for it again. So
you've heard the saying, grow up.
Grow up.
Grow a pair, whatever. You've heard those sayings.
One of the worst things I could see, from my point of view, one of the worst things you can say to your kids. Grow
Oh, for
up,
sure. Because
grow a pair.
what does it mean?
Exactly.
What does that mean?
Exactly.
You can't. When I kind of try to remember how I was at my children's ages, well, literally, my daughter will be 24. At that point, I was married and had 2 children. Was looking after my home. That's not something, honestly, that I would wish for my kids at their ages.
That's the way it was.
That's my own experience, but that doesn't mean that that's not acceptable if there's a child that is married at that age with a couple kids. I did it. I survived. I'm here.
Sure. And they're good kids.
Sure they are. But when I think about my attitudes at that time, I didn't learn everything right away either. I talk about that often, right? Like when I was at home, I didn't help my mom like I could have. I didn't help, keep the kitchen clean or cook meals or just clean in general. I did sometimes. I wasn't like completely horrible, but like I certainly wasn't the model child.
Right. Right.
And you're never going to learn the responsibility of that until you have your own home and have to do it yourself.
Right. And you're not going to be the model parent.
No.
And neither am I.
Yeah. And
there isn't one out there who's a model parent. We all make mistakes. We've all made them, and we will all make them.
I think that the biggest lesson for me, and the biggest tip I could offer from my vantage point, and that certainly is not near the value that Jim could offer, but from my perspective, communication is key.
Absolutely.
Communication is key. You have to keep the lines of communication open with your children. If they're telling you to back off, then by all means, define what back off means and back off.
That's the key.
Let them do it. Let them grow. Let them make their own decisions. They're good kids. You've got them this far.
Yep.
They've had you as an example. And I mean, if you haven't been the greatest of example, well, then maybe you need to exercise some compassion.
Never too late to start.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Anyway, that seems logical to me. Do you have any other tips to add, Jim?
I think that I agree with what you're saying, but in the process of doing that, you also have to hold your kids accountable for their behavior. That's a hard part. If they want to be on their own, and if they want to be like grown-ups, and I'm not saying that they aren't and they shouldn't be and all that kind of thing, but what comes along with the responsibility of acting like an adult is taking your consequences as an adult as well. So in other words, if you're making decisions that are harmful, then you have to own up to that, and you have to pay the price for that.
That includes financial things too. And
absolutely,
I know
everything.
For me as a mom, that's a tough one. That's a really tough one for me. To watch your child struggle if maybe sometimes you have the means to help them out with something or another. It's hard to hold back on that help and maybe just let them sweat it through and try and figure out, as adults, we know that there have been times we have to do without because something else needs taken care of.
Exactly.
And, the sooner they learn that, the better as well.
The value of
that. A
that.
lot of children have the mistaken idea that they can start where we are. And it's taken us
20 years.
40 or 50 years to get where we are. And they're not going to get, in order for them to be where we are, they have to do what we did. And I think as parents, we kind of forget that, and we baby them for moms anyway. That's from my perspective. I feel like that's an area that I would like to work on, is trying to be a little stronger in some of those areas and just let them figure out what to do.
If we just, I'll leave the conversation on this note, but if the more we do for our kids, the less opportunities they have to learn
and grow
and to do for themselves when we're no longer around to do that.
So as parents, take heart, keep communicating. Communicate not only with your children, and if you have a significant other, with them, but talking with other parents can help too, because it can give you a perspective on something that maybe you haven't thought of. And I think that's important too. So communicate. So anyway, have a great week, everybody.
Thanks for stopping by.